This show is sponsored by my new business, MA Capital. I had success in my previous business acquiring companies before I exited earlier in the year. MA Capital is set up to support business owners on that journey, whether they want to sell now or they want to set up for a profitable exit later in the future. If this has piqued your interest and you'd like to work with me, head over to macapital.co.uk. So welcome back to the Fast Pound, Slow Pound podcast. Today we've got on a special guest. He is a property guy. He's built up a significant portfolio in just 6 years, close to around 4 million in value. He's also a director of Horizon Property Group, which was started in around 2018. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you, Matty. Appreciate you inviting me on. It's an honour.
How's things?
Yeah, good. Like I said, first podcast, so you've stolen my podcast virginity.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Guys, just a quick one. Over 75% of our listeners aren't subscribed. So if you are enjoying this, please show some support by liking, commenting, or subscribing wherever you're watching the podcast. It'll allow us to keep getting on amazing guests, and it's massively appreciated. Back to the show. I mean, with it being your first podcast, people won't know your story, the challenges that you've had to get where you are now, because you're clearly successful in what you do. And so how did it all start?
What, me or Horizon? Or what?
Let's go with your story.
Let's go with my story. So the usual sort of standard, went through school, college, followed the traditional sort of school, college, and then on to university route, which I think sort of back in the day was a traditional sort of trajectory that everyone took. Did computer science, came out with a computer science degree. And I remember at the time when I came out of university, the sort of post-grad pay for the students coming out of university was about 40.5 grand. And for some reason, something embedded inside me then, I was like, how can you have got a degree and they're offering you just over 14 grand a year as a salary? It was well, hang on, are you not meant to be a skilled part of the workforce now? So that sort of salary felt like almost a bit of an insult. And at the time, I was earning more working I was part-time initially at Barclays, and then I went full-time after uni. But I was earning more there in what you could class as effectively an unskilled role than I would have been utilising my degree. And then
it's like scam.
It felt it at the time. It was I've wasted all these effectively 5 years, 2 years at college, 3 years at uni, wasted all this time sort of on this path to then get to the end of it and be you can jump down in your pay grade if you want to continue on that sort of career path. But fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you look at it, Barclays, I'd actually got made redundant at Barclays at the time. And that combined with the salary insult was very sort of quick succession. Maybe within a month or two of each other, it was looked at the sort of the job salaries that I was going to be getting, and then got a redundancy package from Barclays because they'd shipped all their UK jobs over to the Philippines, and it was right, I'm now faced with the prospect of go get a job at 40.5 grand and almost take a pay cut to what I was previously at Barclays, or go do something on my own. And for whatever silly reason, parents thought, a bit crazy, like what you touched on with your dad, where it's what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I was I don't want to be 10, 15 years down the line with family, kids, and sort of have someone turn around and go, there's a letter. Your job doesn't exist in 2 weeks. I was I can't let someone else be in control of my future and destiny. And I think I strongly believe if you've got this entrepreneurial sort of bit inside you, you are a bit crazy. You've got to be a bit mad, a bit delusional. Yeah. It's not a sane move to go. I think I must have been about 19, 20 at the time. It's not a normal move to go, do you know what? I'm just gonna write my own sort of destiny.
Especially when everything's stacked up against you, isn't it?
It feels like everything's against you, and it's well, where do you go from here? And it was just I remember sort of sitting on my laptop, as you've probably maybe done in the past, looking on businesses for sale, business forums, trying to get ideas, being where do I go? Where do I turn from? And and like I took a few like little small like part-time ad hoc like sales roles just to sort of like keep bills ticking over whilst I set up my first business in the background, which was like ironically like flipping like clothing and trainers. So it was like a little bit of an eBay side hustle.
What year was this?
That must have been about 2011.
All right, yeah.
It's about 14 years ago. Started like basically going up to Dalton Park.
Yeah.
Going up to the outlets, buying like Nike, Adidas sort of stuff at the outlets, and then putting them out on eBay, sort of double the price.
Proper entrepreneurial that, innit?
It's just the initial reselling, and I've done like lots of reselling, even like, you know, the stereotypical in school reselling stuff, you know, games, DVDs, all that sort of stuff, like what you do, you know, trying to make a little bit of beer money and stuff on the side, really. So I've always had that urge of like, if I can buy something for X and sell it for Y and just take something in the middle, like that's just the concept of business to me. It's like, and my wife Helen has like supported me over many years of daft things, getting like stuff sent in from China. Like I remember at one point I ordered 100,000 pregnancy tests from China.
Class, as you do.
I was on like AliExpress, Alibaba, whatever it's called, just browsing wholesalers, and I was like, oh, these look cheap. Like they're not even a penny each. And I remember like the like FedEx type lorry turning up with like just boxes of them, and we were in a little 2 up 2 down in Thornaby at the time, like a little terraced house. She was like, "What are you gonna do?" I'll put them in the spare room, and I sat on them for ages, put them on eBay, and they weren't shifting. And eventually, I managed to. I think it was like Denmark or somewhere. They ended up going overseas, but apparently they've got different sort of like regulations over there. We don't have like the NHS as such. So yeah, that was an interesting one. Trying to explain to your girlfriend at the time, now wife, why you've got a load of boxes of
it's funny that like,
Chinese pregnancy tests dumped in your spare room.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had a few funny reselling things over the time, but the trainers that went well. I think we had might have had 2 years or so doing that. You know, that was, you know, it took over the spare room, it took over the loft. Like we sort of converted the loft to sort of enhance it, because like at one point we were holding that much stock. As much as I loved it, it was fun. One thing that like I've learned from doing that as one of my first businesses was the like location freedom that it didn't give me. So if you ever went away, you were turning your shop off as such. And like at the time we didn't have kids. Like we knew further down the line we wanted to have kids, but one thing we learned was, you know, we had to be in Teesside, so we couldn't go to America, we couldn't go to France. Like you couldn't just sort of jump away, because then your business basically shut down, your income went to zero. And I remember that was like a deep thing. Like when I eventually sort of sold and exited that business, that was one of the sort of things going into my second business was, right, this is how I want to tailor it and make sure it's different, is that the next business I do, I want to give myself location freedom. So then when I'd sold the trainer business, I just flipped it on eBay, put it as like a business in a box, and sold it really as a packaged business.
Nice. So you put it on a broker's website? Put
it on a few brokers' websites, and then I ended up getting contacted. I put it up as an eBay ad as well, and then someone basically took it as like a full eBay package. So like, you know, took the username, the stock, that sort of like business in a box type style thing. Drove up in a van and just effectively collected username, password, and all the stock really. And it was like, you know, liability is now yours as such. It was more like there you go. But that was only ever getting operated as a sole trader. I never really understood like company structure or anything then. That was like a bit of well, I'm doing it as a sole trader, like, you know, reporting my income, my expenses, but I didn't understand the whole company structure. And at the time it was probably more of like being treated as a side hustle rather than like an out and out company. And then when I moved into doing the sort of online affiliate marketing, the income started coming a lot quicker and a lot faster.
What year are we on now?
2015.
Okay. So you ran sort of, you had a couple of reselling gigs from about 2011 to 2015.
Yeah, I had a couple of reselling gigs, and then there was a bit of an overlap where I was still doing the trainers as I was starting the affiliate marketing. And then I remember what happened was that I was realizing, like, say if I was spending 5-10 hours like packing up items and earning, say, like, I don't know, 20-30 quid or something like that, I was earning that on the affiliate marketing in maybe 20-30 minutes. So then I was like, right, I need to have a time shift focus, because like I need to be putting more energy and time into the like online marketing than I do the like physical stock reselling. So then that's why I was like, right, we'll quickly get that business, we'll sell it up, because this one's like taking off, and you need to be on that train. Like while that train's about to leave the station, I need to be on it. And it was probably very early doors when like Facebook, Instagram were really sort of getting a bit of traction, sort of 2015. And we were like, ironically, we were sort of promoting like football betting, casinos, like sports betting. So it was like right in the sort of early days, and I think we got in at the right time. Just before Facebook and Instagram and everything became big and everyone was on socials. So like ads were super cheap. You were sort of getting your reach was like insane. You were putting posts out and like it was coming up on everyone's feeds.
Yeah.
People weren't doing like Facebook meta ads, whatever you want to call them. People weren't really touching on that. So when you were throwing silly money at ads, the return was incredible. It was almost like, looking back, it was sort of like too good to be true, really. Give us the location freedom. I remember going sort of traveling around America. We did like 7-8 weeks in America, like working on the laptop, earning like a really good income whilst traveling.
Quality.
And
Living
like
the dream at that point.
Yeah,
How old were you there?
I look back now, what would I have been then? Like 24, 25.
Wow.
Spending like 2 weeks in Vegas, like,
This junior partner.
Yeah. So like 2 weeks in the MGM, working on the laptop for a couple of hours, and then just like, chilling in Vegas.
Oh mate, how did it all go wrong?
Well, I look back now thinking, what on earth was I doing deciding to come back to Teesside?
What happened?
So like rode that like train really well. I think we had a good run from about 2015 to about 2018, early 2019. It peaked at one point. We were bringing in like, really good money. It was doing really good numbers. Like you said, it was almost like a too good to be true. And then the government, all the MPs got involved and sort of started really regulating the betting industry. So I don't know how much you know, but like you used to be able to go into like, say, a betting shop, and like the roulette machines and the machines and that, you could put whatever you wanted on. And then they sort of like capped them at £2, I think it was, a spin and stuff. Because, ironically, rightly or wrongly, people were, I don't know, maybe going and getting the benefits money and going straight there and going, put it all on black, all or nothing. I'm either going to have a mint weekend or I'm just going to be staying in bed all weekend. And like, I can understand why they did it. Like, it is one of those things, like, people love gambling, people hate gambling.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a Marmite subject. But regulation came in pretty fast in physical stores and locations. So like you had like your Ladbrokes, Correlate, were all getting heavily regulated on the high street. And then you could start to see it coming into the online sector. So I remember like when I was really heavily in the industry, they started wanting to see like people's pay slips. So like they were like asking you to upload like bank statements to prove you were earning, say, like, I don't know, 40 grand a year, therefore you could afford to bet like X amount a weekend on football. So it became like, what was, you'd have a daft bet on a Saturday with your mates. It became almost like slowly this regulated industry where they almost wanted to like credit check you, income check you, and be like, right, you're allowed to bet 400 quid a month. That's your limit. And then if you go over that, like, you're not allowed to deposit anymore. And I was like, hang on, like all of a sudden, what was a Wild West almost industry is become heavily regulated. So we sort of made the decision really to like be like, right, we need to get out. And we got out. We didn't get out in perfect timing because one of the big companies that we worked with had actually sort of like started shutting down all their marketing arms and we're bringing it back in-house. So like Betfair Paddy Power was like one of the big operators. They used to use a lot of like external third-party like companies to promote them, a lot of like influencers. So you'd be like paying, Z-list celebrities, being like, I'll give you 500 quid if you put a post out or a story out with my links on and like direct them traffic my way. But then it became all too much, and I think there was a lot of people just throwing, crazy traffic about, not regulated, and then they just pulled the plug on everything and said, no, we're bringing it all in-house. So unfortunately, we didn't get out before that happened. Obviously, that hit us financially like quite a lot. But we had some other big players, and we managed to sort of get out, and we sold the company to a Swedish firm.
Oh, nice. So that's your second exit then. So you've always sort of built to sell then?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if that was an intentional build to sell. The first one probably was like the reselling one was almost like we knew it was going to be temporary. The second one, it was almost like you've got to sort of be aware of your situation around you. And I think it came to the point where we were like, regulation was changing quickly. If we don't make a moves, we'd already been hit by one of our biggest clients. If we got hit by some of our other big clients, like we only had around 4 or 5 big clients. It wasn't a 60, 70, 80 clients. You were working with a few peak people. If we got the rug pulled on another 2, we didn't have a business anymore. So we got put an offer in front of us. And it was like almost like do you take that? Or do you try and ride it for another couple of years?
What were they buying then? The Facebook pages with all the
pages, the accounts were ring fenced. So like if I'd signed you up as a client, you were ring fenced under my like marketing company.
Okay.
So you'd get percentages of deposits, percentages of losses. So you'd get like effectively like a small trickle down revenue. But then when you obviously multiply that over thousands of customers, obviously, it becomes a decent income monthly. They were operating on a large basis out in Sweden and Denmark, all the Nordic regions, and they wanted to capture a bit more of the UK market. So it was an ideal acquisition for them. I think they acquired quite a few sort of in a quick succession. But yeah, I'm sort of glad we got out at the time because regulation did come down heavy, but it was an enjoyable time.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, living the life, aren't you? So is Helen similar age to you? Is she?
She's 31, so 3-4 years younger than me.
So he's living the dreams. She's early 20s, you're mid 20s. You're in Vegas.
Yeah. So we had the exit, and then probably within a year or so of that exit, that was like 2018, 2019, 2020. Lily was born, so we sort of like got a bit of structure and normality in Horizon. So I'd been doing that for about 12 months before Lily was born. So it was a bit more of like a stable, like location-based job, a bit more stable property sector. The only reason I ended up getting into property was, you may have felt similar things. When you exit a business, at the time I signed an 18-month non-compete. Part of the deal that they structured was obviously they paid us X amount up front. We had an 18-month non-compete, and then we had an additional amount after 12 months as long as the revenue sustained. So we had like payment on day one and a payment after 12 months. But we had an 18-month non-compete, and I was like, what do I do? I spent the first week just sort of sat at home looking at my bank balance, refreshing it, being like, yeah, it's still there.
This is real.
This is real. And I don't know if you had any of that sort of thought at the time where you were like, has this happened? Like, you don't expect it, and then like when it happens, you're like, what do I do now? Like, where do I go from here? That's all I had sort of like mapped out, and then it's like, right, I need to find a new passion, I need to find a new career. I've always watched like Homes Under the Hammer and property shows growing up, and I've always like jokingly said to Helen, I'd love to buy like a knackered house and just like do it up and then sell it on. And I think it was a bit of reselling, but on steroids. Yeah. It's almost like, I've messed about importing stuff from China and like managed to make that work. So if you put that on like a bit of a higher scale and start buying something at 100 grand and fixing it up and then sell it for 200 and I'm making 30, 40, 50 grand, that's better than making 2 or 3 grand. So I bought a house, didn't go and see it, just completely blindly put a bid on it. It was up for 140 and I remember offering 108. It was up with Robinsons, like back when it was Robinsons back in the day. And I remember just thinking, I'll put the bid in. They're never going to accept it. And it was one of those, I was just bidding on stuff like willy-nilly. Like as an agency owner now, I probably look at those emails coming in thinking, oh God, like here we go. But I was one of those people, like I was just slinging offers on Rightmove Messenger. Like I didn't even have the balls. I didn't even have the balls to get on the phone or go to the office. I was just like sat in my bed 11 o'clock at night being like, I'll give you 30% below market value. Think, well, they're not going to accept it, are they? And I remember the one in Fairfield, them coming back and just saying, we've spoke with the vendor, although it was a little bit lower than they expected, if it is going to be cash, like you've said, they're willing to accept it. And I remember thinking, balls, what have I done? Like, I looked at Ellen and I was like, I've accepted that. And I was like, wow, I've got to like pay 108 grand, like cash. Obviously, I didn't know about mortgages or like, you know, using like loan to value or anything like that and almost leveraging. At the time,
what year was this?
It'll have been sort of 2018, 2019, like roughly around that time when I exited the marketing, got my initial lump and didn't know what to do. And it was like, well, I've got this cash in the bank. I wish I knew about mortgages then because I could have probably built a lot quicker. Went to see it. Like, thankfully I did go, do you know what, right, you've accepted my offer, can I go see it? And, you know, they must have been sat in the office thinking, what's this idiot doing? Like, you know, he's saying he's buying it cash. He's not seeing the house. Now he wants to go see it. And, you know, alarm bells should have been ringing. But, I went to see it and walked around. Didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, staring about, like doing the traditional. Like, I was expecting Dion Dublin. Dion Dublin to come out of the cupboard and like with a camera and say, you know, welcome, Chris. Tapping the walls, like, it looks good. And then pretty much exchanging completed very quickly on that. Obviously, it was cash. Didn't do surveys, didn't do searches. It was just like, right, bang, bang, bang. Got the keys, and I was like, right, where'd you go from here? You know, as you do, naive. I went for the garden first. It seemed like the most logical thing. So I tackled the front garden, tackled the back garden, and then completely like ignored the inside of the house. I'd like smashed a few walls about, and then I just went for the garden because I was like, you know, it's the biggest like thing that gives an impact quickest. If you cut all the trees down, the bushes where it's overgrown from about 5 years of not being touched, it looks amazing now. Forget about the house inside. But yeah, slowly lent on some experience, like help with a friend who had done property for like a year or two, and I'd seen him sort of doing like a few sort of buy-to-lets. And I lent on him for a bit of experience, sort of like jumped in. He was a sparky by trade, so like gives a bit of a hand, showed us the ropes, like effectively learnt from him sort of like the project management side of things. He was heavy on like his Gantt charts and like sort of really mapping out a refurb. Everything like costing, everything was detailed. So like that was probably a good like insight. You know, and I think although he was younger than me, I think you should lean on someone with experience, like regardless of age. Like you should go for someone that's in the know. So leaning on him was great because like I seen the project management, I seen how like the Gantt chart was laid out, I seen all the costings, and then from there I felt confident going into my next one. Managed to do sort of the whole buy, refurb, refinance. It turned out, you know, to be a unicorn deal. Probably not through a lack of experience or anything other than just the right time in the market. Obviously, I didn't realise I was almost in this perfect buyer's market. Houses were ridiculously cheap at the time. You know, that 108 grand house now, you'd probably struggle to pick it up for 160, 170, you know, needing a refurb. It's now like revalued at 200. And I just wish I'd have bought more. Like I said, if I'd have went leverage from day one and spent that 108 grand and went and got 3 buy-to-let mortgages and put my deposits down, did the refurbs and then went again, I reckon I could have had a stronger portfolio. But, you know, I believe that everything happens for a reason. You know, obviously the universe wanted me to go at a certain pace. It might have been a testament. Like Lily arrived in 2020 just as COVID arrived. If I was stuck in 3 or 4 projects, I might have been tearing my hair out a bit more if I was going a bit too quick.
So was Helen involved with the reselling side of things? Has she always been involved in your business like that? Or is that how it...
Yeah, she was involved in like the marketing stuff.
So has she not had like a typical job, let's say?
No. We've always like sort of planned we wanted to have a family, have kids, and sort of be at home. We've both had like parents that were ill, so we both had parents whereby they've always been at home. So like her mum has been ill, and she's always had like a mum at home with a dad caring for her, and my dad had been ill, so I was always used to, like, we both had came from backgrounds where we used to have parents at home, and like early days in our relationship, like as you talk about, oh, I'm gonna get married to you, I'm gonna have babies, like, you know, you talk about your future, and one thing we said was that we wanted to sort of have a position and get into a position where you know, one of us would be at home and we'd have kids, and you know, there'd always be a stable person at home. We didn't want, like, you know, obviously Lily being our first kid, we didn't want like her in a couple of years time as she goes to school, you know, rocking home from school at 3:00 into a house on her own because there's nobody there. And I think when we said about controlling our destiny, that was one of the things that we mapped out. Like, you know, we mapped out on paper, like, you know, what we want, what we don't want, and sort of really deep dived and said, like, how do we like get there? Like, what do we need to do to like walk that path, basically?
It's amazing, man.
And we're still like, you know, the path, like the end towards the path is like, I want to be trying out of it at 40. So I've like got this mental like 5-year block of like, I'm 35 now. I've like said 40. I want to sort of really down tools at 40. And just be able to spend like time with the kids. Lily then will be sort of going on 9, and the boys will be sort of like 4 or 5. I don't want their childhood to sort of go in a blink. You know, you'll know what it's like having a baby. Like, you blink, don't you? And you feel like
It's crazy, isn't it?
how quick they like go from not moving to crawling to walking to like, you know, I feel like I've blinked and Lily all of a sudden went from being a baby to like, she's now this big girl, and it's like, it went so fast.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sort of be grafting non-stop, which I don't mind, like working non-stop, but I don't want to be working non-stop, not being there and present for her, and getting to a point where she's, you know, 15, 18 and thinking like, yeah, I've worked hard and yeah, I've got all this money, or I've got all this portfolio, but I wasn't there for a nativity, or I wasn't there for a swimming lesson. So like, one of the things that I'm big on is like, say for example, like a Wednesday, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where she goes like swimming at David Lloyd's at like 4:30 on a Wednesday. I always leave the office early because like, to me, that's important. Things like that are like where I want to have the right balance. Like, I want to do the work and, you know, graft hard. I'm always striving for more, but family is really important. And I think that balance, location, time freedom is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've took a massive, like, I've took my foot off the gas since selling the business. And I always ask myself, like, if I earned an extra 10, 20, 30 grand this month or this quarter or whatever, would I spend that to have had the time with the baby? And the answer's always, you know, you'd always pick that, wouldn't you? So there's no amount of money that can fulfill you in that way. But how are you balancing 3 kids with work? Like, how does it currently look at the moment? Are you missing things like, you know, nativities and stuff? Like, how are you doing it?
No, I think, I don't know how I've ended up in like a very good balance. Like, I've got, obviously Helen's super supportive. Obviously she's at home, and then obviously with Horizon and general workflow, can manage to be in the office for like most of the time. And like I said, it's like, it's getting that structure right. So I'll do the school run, and then I'll usually go back after the school run, sort out the boys' bottles, maybe give them a nappy change, and then jump in the truck and then off to the office. And then I usually don't get on to pick Lily up. She finishes like between 3, 3:15. I don't usually get to pick her up very often, which, it's sad, but you do have to take some balance. You know, you've got to take some things away, and like, you can't have everything. Yeah, I'd love to pick her up every day. I think everyone would, you know, love to drop her off, pick her up, but there does have to be some sort of like leeway, and I'm fully aware that you've got to have that balance. Like, you know, you can't have everything. You know, I've got to give some form of like 70-30. So like, if I've 30% of the time where I can drop her off and I can leave early for swimming, then it means that I can't always do the pickup. So yeah, it's a funny one, balancing it. But if something's important to me, then I'll make sure I'm there.
Where does your entrepreneurial spark come from? Because obviously we've spoke quite a few times.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea that you had the background of, you know, your marketing businesses and stuff, especially so young at 19, 20 as well. Like, So where does that come from, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like a bit of a determination of like, you know, love my parents, but obviously didn't see them going out to work. And then I don't know if that's sort of both in me and my brother sort of stirred this like passion and drive for work. Like Helen said to me many a time, like I work too much. Like before I had the kids, I'd happily be up 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, still on the laptop working away. And I just don't know when to switch off. But I think that's allowed me, you know, putting in the legwork, you know, in the early years has probably allowed me to be in more of a balanced position now. Whereas a lot of people might still be putting in the legwork now. Obviously I put the legwork in very early doors, you know, 7 days a week, you know, in the marketing business. I didn't even have a day off. Like Christmas Day, I was still working. Although it was, you could say it was location, you know, freedom. I could go anywhere and work, but I was still working. Like if you think Boxing Day is probably one of the biggest sporting calendars, not only football, horse racing, it's one of the biggest like revenue generation things. So like Christmas Day, I think we must have went through about 4 or 5 years of like me not really having a drink on Christmas, and Helen sort of seen me enjoying Christmas, getting till about 5, 6 o'clock, and then having to graft till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to know everything's set up for Boxing Day, because it is one of the biggest like days of the year. So you're sacrificing stuff like then in the past to allow you to be in the position you are now. But yeah, I think like sort of seeing the family dynamics at home, not seeing my parents going out with a traditional like job. Obviously they worked before they had like an accident. So not seeing the traditional like going out 9 to 5, all my other friends doing like the standard 9 to 5 roles. I think that's put a bit of a spark in. Like I've ended up down the entrepreneurial route, working for myself, and then my brother sort of went down the medical route and went in medicine and is like a doctor down in Oxford. So he's like went down the traditional path of like high performing career, and then I've went down the crazy path of, you know, mad entrepreneurial business owner route. But yeah, it's always been a blend, and if anything crosses my path of, you know, being able to make money, I'll always sort of twist my arm on it.
So we're up to about 2018, 2019 now. You've bought your first property. You've done well out of it. How did that turn into Horizon Property Group?
Yeah,
so for people who don't know, you know, Horizon, could you just give people a brief understanding of, you know, what you've actually created? Because they're not just, you know, like you said off air, you guys were up to 25 staff. So yeah.
Yeah, so we when we started out with Horizon, we mapped it out to be an all-round like 360 property company. So we do, on the face of it, people see it as an estate agency, traditional sales and lettings estate agency. We also do, you know, we've got 2 mortgage brokers in the team. I've got like a full team of, you know, daily sort of maintenance, as well as like full refurbs of residential, commercial houses. Service accommodation management, so like corporate lets. So like the team is about 20 members of staff employed on payroll, and then obviously there's a lot of subcontractors behind that, like, you know, cleaners, general subbies. So like the wider team's probably up to about 40 odd people on the wider team, of like, if you include the people that are getting paid every week regardless. But yeah, it's a full wraparound property service really. So like if there's anything to do with property, you know, I can bet you that we probably do it.
There's not much that goes on in Teesside without you knowing about it either, is it? Like,
yeah, and I think we set out like to disrupt the market. When me and Dennis had set up, obviously he was my mortgage broker doing my mortgages, and then we were both doing bits of sourcing at the time, and it was like we both had a passion for numbers. We understood the sourcing element, and we were just like, you know, why don't we make a thing of this? Martin, ironically, at the time was our builder. He was our sort of main gaffer. And then obviously the 3 of us got along really well, and it made sort of like sense to bring Martin in. He was doing so much, like running around in the early days, like, and without Martin, I don't think we could have fully operated. So it's like we all play our own individual strengths, and I think the 3 of us, it's great because like you almost bounce off each other. Everyone has their own strengths, and then like wherever your weaknesses are, someone else is pulling you up.
That's what I wanted to dive into more about the partnership dynamics, because without the dynamics being right in a partnership, it doesn't work. Now, that might seem obvious, but I think if there's too much overlap in skill sets, and then it just doesn't work, does it?
Yeah.
So the Sparky you spoke about earlier, was that not Martin?
No, that was a different.
That was a different guy.
Yeah.
So, but Martin was doing.
Martin was a former Sparky, so I think he's done a lot of sort of non-residential, sort of like offshore electrical work.
He's all Stockton lads as well, or?
Yeah, so I'm Stockton. Macca's more Ingleby, and then Dennis is sort of like Martin. Like I think his sort of Middlesbrough is his sort of bag. So we all sort of covered our sort of areas. Martin sort of covered Ingleby. I was always sort of like Hartburn, Fairfield, bits of Stockton. Dennis was always like Middlesbrough. So it worked well from the sourcing side of things.
How would Dennis and Martin describe you?
That'd be an interesting one. Probably the person that sort of sits and just makes sure everything's ticking over. In the office, I'm always the IT guy, so anything breaks, it's like call Chris. Anything that goes wrong, call Chris.
Yeah, so you quite like the technical.
Yeah, so obviously the IT side of things has always seemed to follow through with me wherever I've been. The IT side always comes through. But yeah, so it's a bit of everything. But like, yeah, we set out a disrupt when we set up with the sourcing fees. People were like, you can't have an estate agency and you can't charge the buyer and the seller. We had a bit of backwards and forwards with solicitors, like legal teams, to make sure that we were legal. There was a few like local big industry veterans that were like, you can't do this. And sort of in Dennis's words, it was like, well, I can hold my beer, like, watch me go out and do this. And like for the first like year or two, we were putting out buyers premium fees. We had all like the other local agents sort of, doing the usual, slagging us off, going out on market appraisals. Oh, don't instruct that horizon, they charge the buyer. And, we heard loads of stuff coming back to us through the grapevine. So like you'd have family members that another agent didn't know was like related to one of us. Like they'd be going out on a market appraisal, slagging us off, but then it'd come back to us directly. So we were like hearing what all these other agents were saying about us, and it was quite comical at one point. It was like, we really are disrupting the market. Like we're getting up people's necks, and it's like, if people are talking about you, you're obviously doing something right, because you're rattling them for one reason or another. And then I remember seeing other agents start charging buyers fees, and I was like, oh wow, we really have disrupted this local market.
Yeah.
We started seeing a couple of other agents in the local area putting buyers premium fees out. And it was at that point we knew that we had made the right decision, and everyone then started following. And there's quite a lot of agents that do it now. So what went from like, you can't do that, to like, well, watch us, is now like quite a common concept around a lot of sort of northeast based agents.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to obviously do the sourcing, and I used to do it with an agent, and he let me know that he was charging the seller as well, which just blew my mind. I was like, what? I thought we were just halving these fees, but it's a smart thing to do, isn't it? You're doubling your revenue on a deal.
Yeah.
But was that for like investment sales only, or was that for like actual,
Pretty much investment sales only. We don't really do a lot of stock for your big outright residential. Like we have done stuff, we've taken stuff on and we've sold it over the years. But our bread and butter has always been investment. It's where we always win the most money, like win the most business. We know we can make money off it. We know we can sell it. I never really want to take an instruction on if I can't sell it, because I just think, what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah.
It still baffles me to this day. Like I'm not an out-and-out estate agent. I'm more like, businessman. Like I don't think of myself as an estate agent. We, think of ourselves as like business operators. I don't understand these agents that go out to win business, to put a board up. Like I get the whole boards breed boards and all this sort of agency talk, but like, why do you want to get like a board up, do all this work, cost the business a load of money if it's never going to sell?
Yeah, I mean, overvalue it and then
like
down,
just
down.
what?
You just want to know what you want to sell it.
Yeah,
what you sell it for.
Does it look pretty? You putting a board up in someone's garden and putting a post out on socials, like oh yes, I've won this one, but like I'm not going to make any money out of it. Like I'm going to charge the company. Like I'm putting a cost to the company by erecting a board, and then I've got all these other costs involved. But like you know, in a estate agency, you don't make money until the property completes. So like going out to overvalue something to know that it's never going to sell, you know, I just don't see the point.
I don't know how estate agents can make money as well. It's such a shit model, isn't it?
We've said this, so like, if we've looked at our business like over 5-6 years we've been doing it, and if we were to eradicate the buyer's premium side of things, we'd have probably folded in 6 months, 9 months. You know, by the time you take into account things like Rightmove fees or like any portal fees, software fees, staff, you know, overheads for like rent, gas, electricity, by the time you start adding up, your expenses are phenomenal. And you're getting paid on completion, so there's no like easy cash flow. Your cash flow is unpredictable because you're almost like working on the rule of like, you know, 75% of stuff you put in legals will probably complete, 25% is probably going to drop out. You don't know when it's going to complete because some solicitors will have it done within 8 to 12 weeks. Some, if you've got purple bricks, you know, on one side, like, you know, you could be waiting 12 months, 16 months. Like, so like from a business point of view, like where, you know, accountants and things are probably used to like predicting cash flow and like doing these lovely forecasts, knowing that how like predictable cash is. It's so much like different in a estate agency because you don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. You know, stamp duty changes, for example, when that came out recently, a couple of properties fell by the wayside because people were like, well, I'm not willing to pay the extra stamp duty, and then the seller's not willing to reduce, and then you all of a sudden you're just back with a few transactions on the market where you had that money banked because you were like, right, that's pipeline, that's banked, you know, nothing's gonna happen to that. Government make a change, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're left with a couple of properties that have just fallen out of bed for no reason.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as well, like if you're employing someone to sell a house, you potentially might have to pay that staff member's wage 2 or 3 times before you get your fee as a business.
And the rest, and you need multiple staff members. Like, you know, you can't just have one staff. You know, you need multiple members of staff, and you're also competing against the race to the bottom type style of business.
Yeah,
you know, it's not an industry where you can charge what you want. Like, you can charge what you want and you can do what you want, but you are up against the race to the bottom. And like, sadly, people don't put a value on like an estate agent, you know, doing a good job. Like, they don't see the value of like, if you passed it to an estate agent that could have your house sold within a day or a couple of days, they don't see that worth more money than going to someone that'll go, I'll do it for 495 plus VAT. Like, you know, and you're like, how can you charge 495 plus VAT? And like, you know, you're competing against the penny, you know, the race to the bottom penny pinchers. And if you're going out going, well, ours is like, you know, 1,500 quid plus VAT, and they're like, well, I can go to like Tommy down the road and he's 400 quid, and it's like, yeah, but he's not going to do anything with it. So it's a funny industry. Like, it's probably one of the hardest industries, I'd say, out of the couple that I've been in. Like, yeah, you can make some good money if it's done right, but it's so tricky.
Yeah,
such a funny industry. Like, you almost make your own rules, but you are like dictated in terms of what you can do.
We've had a whinge about it, haven't we?
Yeah, many a time. I think the biggest problem with the property industry is the conveyancing side of things. I think the whole getting a property, you know, winning the market appraisal, listing it, agreeing it to be sold is great.
Yeah.
But I think at the point where, like, say if me and you are like doing a transaction, I think at the point where we agree, right, I'm buying a house off you for X amount, I think there should be some form of legally binding contract where I have to put, I don't know, 10% in escrow, or like you can counter sue me if I was to pull out. Like, you're allowed to sue me for like, you know, certain amount of losses, or like there's got to be some form of like hook on both parties so people can't just walk away.
Yeah, there's 2 things there. I think, first of all, is that not the modern method of auction where what you're talking about there?
Yeah, which obviously we both, you know, are strongly sort of like leaning on, aren't we, with, you know, sort of partnerships we're working on together and things like, you know, the modern method of auction. I think we've both identified like we're putting a lot of effort into that sort of route because it does solve a lot of problems.
100% on for everyone.
Yeah,
for absolutely everyone. I think the one thing I'm realising though is just the sellers need to be more realistic, you know, because they could go give it to Tommy down the road and they'll list it for 20, 30 grand more.
But in 6 months' time, they're still sat there twiddling the thumbs.
It's not a sale, is it?
Yeah.
And then also, I think, like, the Americans, they seem to have a better model, doesn't it? It seems to be more personal. It's like brokerage and personal brand, isn't it? And they get paid a lot for what they do, don't they? But maybe that's just in certain markets where the houses are a fortune, where we're dealing with probably the cheapest house.
But like you said, I think in America, it's the personal, it's the brokerage, but I think their fees are really high. Like, I think they get like a certain percentage of the overall sale. Imagine if you said to a vendor, I'm taking 5% of your sale fee. Like, God, you'd be kicked out of their house, wouldn't you? If you were like, sell that for 100 grand and I'll have 5% of it. Like, they'd be like, they'd be cursing you. They'd be going crazy.
They've got to sit exams and stuff though, where it's unlicensed here, isn't it?
And that's the thing. Like, it can become like the Wild West. You can get like someone can just go set up shop tomorrow and do what they want. I think hopefully, I know lettings side of things. Obviously, there's talks of like the ALA level 3, sort of coming in from a lettings perspective. I think that'll sharpen things up a lot, and we've started putting our staff like slowly drip feeding the ALA level 3 stuff in, like Rightmove do some good courses, like giving out that accreditation. That'll definitely help tide up the letting side of it, but sales side, it can be like the Wild West at times.
Lettings, I was just having a conversation with Chris before this one, because he's starting to do lettings. What would your advice be to someone who's doing sales, sourcing, maybe bit refurbs? Would you advise them to do the lettings as well?
It's funny because when we were doing sort of sales and like sourcing, like back in the early days, we were giving all of our business to Andy. So like we were doing all this sourcing, selling, and then we were passing it off to another letting agent. And like, we might have got a beer every now and then, but like it was always in the back of our mind thinking, hang on, every deal we're sourcing, like we're almost like giving away all this money. Like, obviously we've got a lot of respect for Andy and, we still do business with him now, but it's like, we looked at it over a while and we're like, as much as he's a great friend, like, why are we giving all this money away? So obviously we set up the lettings business, probably didn't realise like how much is involved in it. We've got pretty fortunate with having some good staff over the years. Like, I think there's only really been 1 or 2 members of staff that have parted ways. As a rule, touch wood, sort of thing. We've had a good sort of run of staff, and we've been pretty fortunate. Don't get me wrong, staff come with headaches. Like, I love them all to bits. Like, they're like an extended family, and that's one thing that we always joke about is like we're like one big family sort of thing. We treat them well, treat them probably how we'd want to be treated, and I think we do get a lot back from them because we are flexible and pretty laid back. But yeah, I know you've touched on it with me in the past, haven't you? Like, staff is sometimes one of the things that keeps you up at night. But yeah, lettings, I think you need to have the right staff. Like that's the pinnacle of it, is like, if you have the wrong staff trying to run a lettings business, like, it's just carnage. It's just absolute carnage. It's a car crash waiting to happen. And I think experience is key. Like the member of staff, the 2 that we had in lettings, I think one had served about 7 years in industry and one had about 4 or 5 years in industry. So, they came with a wealth of knowledge. They knew a lot more than like me, Martin and Dennis in theory, like when they came in, even though we were doing like, our own portfolios and stuff, like they knew all the lettings, like legwork, legal stuff. I wouldn't have like known how to serve a Section 21, what letter to send out when, they just do it all on autopilot. So we've been sort of very fortunate, like got a good team there.
It's the sort of people you want, isn't it, in terms of people who are better than you?
Yeah.
Crazy concept to get your head around in the beginning, isn't it?
It is, and like I sometimes like I laugh about it because like I'm company director, like the 3 of us company directors, and then like you look at some of the team and they are really skilled, and like it is like an extended family, isn't it? When like you look at them almost, it sounds a bit weird, but like like your kids almost, and it's like when one of them does really good, you're like, oh, I'm proud of you type thing, and it's like. Obviously, there is staff that are older than me, don't get me wrong. I don't just hire like all young people, but like even like say Kev, older than me, he goes out on evaluation and wins it. I'm like, oh, nice one, like proud of you type thing. Like it is like a sense of achievement. Anyone in the team does good. Like you do feel like really positive about it.
Is Horizon? So you mentioned Kev there. Does he do like your traditional sales, or is that not what do you not do that?
So he does a bit of traditional sales, yeah. A lot of it would more be sort of generic referrals, like me, Martin, Dennis, like close referrals for the traditional sales. We do get it, like obviously you get like your right move, like you're on the market, like leads. Obviously we still try and close them. We do bring normal sales to the market because obviously a lot of the time we do have an outlet. So anything up to maybe about 150 mark, we could have an outlet for like the SA corporate let type route. Like a lot of those houses, like your 3-4 bed semis, can work for that. They might not work on a buy to let route because the income, like the yield, will be a bit low on a buy to let. But with SA, you're getting a bit more income. The yield goes up a little bit. It can work on the higher value stock. As you probably peak past that, you would struggle maybe to place it with an investment part of the team. Unless it's sort of commercial, like going down the commercial route. But I think you'll probably have a similar thought process. You start getting 200 grand plus houses. It's hard to sort of place that on an investment type model. Beautiful houses, but yeah, it's hard to try and say to an investor, I've got this 250 grand house, it's beautiful, we'll get a 3% yield on it. Your mortgage rate might be 4%, but we'll give you a 3% yield on it.
Exactly. What's the best part of your, because obviously you're running probably 4 or 5 businesses in one, aren't you?
Yeah, effectively, yeah. They're all sort of like, we've set up all of the businesses, like got a bit of tax advice. So like we've got the overall holdings group company, but each company, like each business is effectively its own company.
Do you run separate P&Ls for them?
Yeah.
Which is the best?
Probably the sourcing company.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably portfolio building, probably the sourcing company.
That's interesting.
And then not far behind, probably SA, probably not far behind.
SA management, yeah.
Yeah.
So the sourcing because it's high margin and it needs the lowest amount of staff.
Yeah, so a lot of the costs, we're trying to split out the costs as accurately as possible, but like a lot of the costs are like front loaded from the estate agency, as you can imagine. Like a lot of the softwares are like estate agency front loaded.
Yep.
So like the investment team, there's like 4 of them on the investment team. They'll be using we're using Lifecycle, so like Expert Agent. So they'll be using the software that the estate agency use. But obviously they jump onto it, but don't pay the cost, if that makes sense, because it's already within the estate agency. So portfolio building, they don't have a lot of expenses, and it is high income. It's high ticket income. It's regular, like 3.5, 4 grand, 5 grand plus VAT fees. So regular income coming through, and expenses are low. It's just the staff wages inside that company.
What's the worst one?
Potentially the construction,
Really?
Yeah. Obviously high staff wages, expenses, obviously materials through the roof. And like when you're doing a source deal and it's a full wraparound package and we've went out and quoted that, say like 18 grand, and you start ripping the walls out, something crops up. Like you might make a profit on it, but it might not be the 20% that you envisaged. Things can sort of like crop up. Projects run on a little bit longer. I'd probably say it runs, well from a P&L. It hits the sort of metrics that we'd want it to hit, and we have an FD. That's one thing that we started doing recently is we've brought an FD into the business. We've hit a certain sort of threshold.
Full time.
No, he consults, so pretty much once a month. So we do the P&Ls. We report the P&Ls monthly for each company.
When did you start reporting the P&Ls?
Probably about March, April time this year. I think we started taking it a bit more seriously.
Wow. What effect has that had on the business?
Massive. We've with the advice of the FD, started making the business a bit more leaner. As you probably know, like growing a business, you can almost get carried away. You've got a cold like software company ringing you up, cold calling you. I've got this new piece of estate agency software. It's 300 quid a month. Oh, sound, yes, 300 quid a month. We're doing like 30, 40 grand a month. That's now like, and then you've got 5, 6 of them on top of each other as a subscription coming out, and then you start looking and you're like, wow. So like the FD like went through line by line over months of like working out what was necessary, what wasn't necessary for the business, and we really deep dived, and then we ended up shaving about 11 grand a month in costs, and a lot of it was just subscription and software, where we just sort of taken out a piece of software or taken out something that like was fancy, and we were sold it and it looked good. Yeah, it worked and we used it in the business, but it wasn't necessary. It was like a bonus to have, but it wasn't a requirement. And then we're now starting to see like the businesses coming at the end of this year a lot leaner. It's a lot more peaceful when you get to sort of month end, and you're not sort of scrambling around paying like all your bills out, like knowing that staff wages going out, the rent for the building, and like everything's going out completely fine. It makes you sleep better at night. So like we did scale up like at the start of the year, probably too much. It said we had too many bodies. Staff bill was incredible. Expenses out was incredible, and it was unsustainable. Yeah, you could say bring in more sales, bring in more revenue, but it's like it's easier said than done, isn't it? There is a certain limit on how much one team can do. So yeah, we brought in the FD. Took advice from our accountants, said, have a chat with this FD, specialises in sort of like the 5 to 10 mil sort of revenue businesses. We really think he'd be of benefit to you. And he comes in once a month and he's really sort of helped us turn it around.
Is he quite to the point and brutal with it? Yeah,
he's brutal, he's to the point. Like I said, he sort of specialises in sort of certain revenue sectors. So like it's like your small to medium sort of sectors, but he is brutal. Like he sits the three of us down. We'll have a full day. Like gets locked out in the boardroom. All the staff know like don't disturb them. They're in a meeting for the full day, and it is just all numbers. And like I said, yeah, he's brutal. Like telling you, you need to cut staff. Like you need to do this, you need to do that, and it's like, okay, what do you do if someone says you need to cut staff and you need to cut this? It's who's first on the chopping board?
Who's going to have the awkward conversation?
Yeah. Who's going to have the awkward conversation? Where does it need chopping from? Like what needs doing? But yeah, we've had to like follow his lead and follow his advice. It's what's the point in paying a mentor? What's the point in paying a financial director if you're not going to listen to them and take their advice?
Would you have done it earlier in hindsight?
I think it might have been, if we'd have done it earlier in hindsight, it probably wouldn't have stopped us maybe growing. He might have put a limit or a cap on when we were growing. He might have said like, slow down lads. Like, I think it was, we were getting that much work in and there was that much happening that it just like, the initial answer always seemed to be, I'll just employ someone else. I'll just get someone else. And like, as much as, that is the answer, it's not always the best answer. Putting extra bodies in, like throwing extra bodies at a job doesn't always make it go quicker. And that's one thing that I think we've all learned is, the stereotypical, how many people do you need to change a light bulb? One person can change a light bulb, but if you throw 5 people at it, doesn't mean to say it's going to get done quicker. We'll be fighting over who's putting the ladders up. It's that's what we realised. And I think, we just needed someone probably a bit more experienced that's been through the mill with many other businesses and other sectors to sort of be brutal and tell us how it is and say like, sort yourselves out, like look at it from the top down. He's external to the business, has no influence on it, just looks at the numbers and looks at everything black and white and just sort of tells it how it is. Doesn't have any emotion attached to it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is removing the emotion. When you're not in it sort of 5 days a week or 7 days a week, you've got no emotion. You can say those 2 members of staff need to go. That needs all trimming because those costs are ridiculous. It's much easier for someone to sit and say that from an external point of view.
Do you have an in-house book, like full-time bookkeeper?
Full-time bookkeeper, yeah.
Working across all of them?
Yeah, working across all of them. So that's like, it's constant zero reconciliation. You'll probably know from your accountancy type days. So like, she's just non-stop, like across all of the groups, like any expense, like any bank transaction is getting coded. So we've got like nice looking P&Ls and we can pull reports. We can see everything's coded. So like, even like down to the construction side, every job, every sort of screw fix receipt is coded per project. So like in Zero, every refurb that gets done has its own like Zero code, which has been good to track refurbs, because we were tracking refurbs, but not as detailed as we've started doing them in the last sort of 6 months. It was more like, you know, you sort of back of a fag packet, a bit fancier than that. Whereas now it's like, you know, you go and buy a pack of screws from Screwfix. I need to know which job that those screws are going on to. And if you're using half the screws, where the other half going, like, so we've got really detailed, but yeah, it's going to make like going into 2025 a lot nicer. Like it's going to put the business onto another pedestal, really.
Has it been, have you went through quite a difficult time over the last sort of 12, 18 months with, well, say 12 months with that, hiring too many people and stuff like that?
Yeah, so like end of 23, early 24, it did get to a stage where it got crazy. Like, yeah, there was loads of cash coming in the front end, which obviously feels great, but like when you've almost feel like you've got more cash going out the back end, it's like, yeah, the numbers look great on paper when you see revenue in, and it's like, yeah, but then when you look at your expenses out, like,
it's all about profitability, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it just took a couple of months of us realising, like, right, what do we do? Like, we don't want to, like, it's like go shit or bust. Like, we don't want to lose Horizon. Like, we've worked so hard over years to do it. Like, what changes do we need to make? So obviously consulted with like Abacus, spoke with all of our accountants, bookkeeper, and then obviously, yeah, made that decision to bring the FD in. And I don't know why we weren't doing as detailed accounts, as detailed P&Ls, but it's probably one of those, when you're in the thick of it, you're in the trenches, it's another thing to add onto your list, isn't it? And it's only really when you sort of look back, you think, well, why didn't we? It's easy now in hindsight to say, oh yeah, it's like, it's just run of the mill. It's like every month now we like get a bit of food and drink and like sit around the boardroom with like the bookkeeper and the FD and stuff and look at the P&Ls for each company and analyse them and look at like how it's looking going back and how it should be looking forecasting forward. But yeah, if we'd have done that in the past, I think it might have been steadier, but what's the fun in having a steady ride?
It's one of the things that I've stressed to town and countries, like, you know, we need to sit, not just produce a P&L, because that's one thing, and have Zero, but actually sit down and discuss it, because that's where the value is, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think we started producing the P&Ls. Well, like Zero produces them for you, doesn't it? But we never actually discussed them. Like, I don't even think we were even getting them emailed out. It was like, oh, your P&L's on Zero. All right, sound. Yeah. Like, nobody looked at it.
Yeah, because then you're into the next month and it's 100
like,
mile an hour. It's like,
yeah, it's like, well, like, oh, someone's on the phone. Oh, Chris, can you speak to so-and-so? Like, oh, you've got an email. And like, oh, someone's at the door. And it's like, there's too much going on. So like, when you've actually got to diarise, like you said there, like, the difference between having a P&L and actually having it printed out and everyone sat around the desk with like, get the water, get some sandwiches in, and like make a regular occurrence of it where like every month you know that's in the diary, and like you go into that meeting unless something major is happening, like, you know, that's like a high priority meeting, like you're not missing that meeting. So yeah, that it's been good, and like I've enjoyed looking at the figures and actually seeing like the business in more detail, looking at it from a business point of view rather than being in the trenches and going day to day and surviving.
Yeah, I could talk about this sort of topic for ages, but I'm going to move it on. So we've got sort of a 5-year plan mapped out.
Yeah, so funny enough, we've done an acquisition 2023. We've got another acquisition, another 2 acquisitions going through at the moment.
Nice, 2, yeah, good. Is that the one? Is that the one I've got in mind?
Yeah. So that one's being complete. Another one's going through, and then obviously there's another one that we want to discuss as well off air.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so going forward, we want to like continue on the acquisition side of things.
Is that like full scale estate agencies or lettings businesses?
Probably more the lettings businesses. Obviously, we'll bolt on sales parts. You know,
there's a lot of value in the lettings business.
The lettings business definitely carries the value. I mean, sales, you know, there can be a bit of value when you're controlling the vendors. From like our investment team can sort of like jump on and cherry pick and control the vendors and things. but the value is, like you said, few and far between, because you're not guaranteed any form of money. Lettings, you could say they could up sticks and leave the month after you take over the book, but the likelihood of that is pretty low. It's going to be like a lot of like lettings acquisitions. We'll obviously take sales on where possible, and then prop tech is where we're looking at moving into for sort of 2025 onwards.
Was that building out a CRM or something?
Yeah. So we've had our advanced assurance from HMRC signed off.
What does that mean?
Basically, we're putting it on like a Cedars platform. So we're going to be raising. So if people have got like capital gains or like any sort of tax relief that they want to write off, they can invest in the sort of the prop tech company, and it basically defers the like capital gains, defers any tax write off. So obviously for the very high income earners, it's obviously quite a good benefit, because like they can write off all the tax, and then they only pay tax on it when they release the shares.
What's it going to be?
So it's prop tech. So it's CRM. So basically we're taking all of the problems that we've found over years of like building Horizon and putting it into one big platform.
Because there's nothing out there because estate agencies moved on, hasn't it? It has to be sort of full scale now. You have to do the buyer's premium. You have to take on the refurbs. You have to do lettings and sales and whatnot, where people only just used to do sales, maybe sales and lettings, or just lettings in there. So there's no. And that's no
basically what you've touched on there is what we've mapped out. So we've spent a lot of time with a tech company mapping out sort of the system, having a good couple of days of like literally hundreds and I'm not even joking, hundreds of sticky notes and like mapping out the floors and like literally mapping out this CRM to then sort of try and quantify like a price, like how much it would be in terms of developers' time, and then the hourly rate, and like sort of trying to get a ballpark figure of like what do we need to fundraise. But basically, it's going to be everything from sales and lettings, like your general estate agency. It's going to harness like the refurb side, SA management, like income. But the one big thing that we want to touch on is like the thing that we've always learned over the years is the only thing that we not fail on, but ever have feedback on is communication. And it's not through a lack of not being willing to communicate with landlords and like clients and things. It's just time. We have got that many things on the go. As much as we'd love to say like pick up the phone and talk to you for half an hour, we don't have the time. So like we want to build this portal that like if you're sat at home as like Matty Alder, the landlord, you can jump on, you can look at all your properties, you can see when your rent was paid, like who your tenants are, you can see your gas certs, all of your like documents are on there. You can see like how your properties are performing on a yield perspective. You can monitor like your mortgage rate. So like touching on a bit of like similar to like Lendlord. I don't know if you've used that yourself. Like that's a good bit of software. But basically harnessing this like all-in-one package where you can monitor everything. So if you had a refurb going on, you can see what tranche the refurb's at, like what stages things are at. Then when it goes through to the lettings team, you can see like any applications, you can see the tenants that's in there. Basically just giving you a full constant like 24/7 snapshot where it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, you can just log in. There's no staff obviously at the Horizon office, but you can access every bit of information you need. And you can get it on your phone. You can see how your property portfolio is performing, and if it's rubbish, almost like we were joking about it, like click a button and you click sell, like almost like like a stocks and shares where you've got this thing and you just go like sell position, and it's like that then almost releases like a signal to the investment team, and it's like Matty Alder's selling his position in like this house, and then you go from this like button of you pressing this button to like it feeds into the investment team, and then all of a sudden that then creates a listing and an appraisal, and it almost goes full cycle, and then someone else can then almost buy that and then feed into their portfolio. We've got this mad idea in our head.
My management raised me as well. She's like,
you can imagine what it was like spending a couple of days with the three of us, all like me, Martin and Dennis, all crazy ideas like at the best of times. So like the three of us all sat in a room, like wired up on like caffeine, getting fed coffee constantly, and just had loads of post-it notes. And the tech guys, bless them, I think they were at one point thinking like, they were looking at the watches going, can we go home yet? Like, are we done? They were just constantly just mapping out new things. And then Dennis, he's a loony. He was just going, oh, do this. Oh, what about this? And I was like, calm down. I've got a bit of an IT background, and I'm thinking, I feel sorry for the poor bloke that's going to have to try and like dev this. Like, someone's going to have to try and build this.
There is a huge problem though, isn't there, with the CRMs in the state agency, like, because you've got like the pay prop, fixed flow, all great bits of kit, but it's separate systems, isn't it? If you have it all in one, it's
and that's the thing, is we identified not a lot of them talk to each other very well, and that's one thing that we wanted to solve, was like, right, we're going to do this prop tech thing, and we want to do it to solve a problem. Like, the software, some of them are great, but there's no integration, there's no talking, and then that's like the person that suffers the most is the client, because the communication's weak, and like, we could put loads of notes on and we could be actioning loads of things, but they don't know about it. So they just think that we're like all sat in an office in Middlesbrough, like, tossing it off, doing nothing, when really like everyone's grafting. Like, the teams very rarely just sat around doing nothing. Like, they're always a million mile an hour, but like to the outside, sometimes they just think, well, I can't see anything happening. And it's like, well, there's loads of stuff happening. It's just the softwares aren't telling you, basically.
Because if you think about the customer journey, it's massive, isn't it? You can even go right the way to the start, from like marketing to like education to then sourcing, right the way through to like refinancing. So there's a huge customer journey that, if it all could be put together, it'd be massive.
That's the thing, and like just touching on everything from like, your mortgage product's expiring, click a button, and then it'll show you a couple of products, and then you can get in touch with like Amy, Rianne, someone in the team who can then run you through mortgages and like try and get your product swapped, and like just making it as seamless as possible, and like keeping you in charge. So like CP12's expiring, knowing that like one's being booked in, so you can see it's being booked in, and then you can see the new cert going on, so that like ultimately you're the one that's liable, but like it's being done. So like you can sleep better at night knowing that the agency's done it, but they actually have done it, and you can see it.
That's exciting, mate. Very exciting.
It's going to be a long drawn out process. They reckon sort of like estimating about 6 to 9 months for the development of it, with everything that we've mapped out. But we're excited to get it going. We've started fundraising on it.
How much do you need to raise?
About $500,000.
Yeah.
So it's but the benefit is because it's so tax friendly. Anyone with sort of like your capital gains tax, like corporation tax, any form of tax really, it gives a relief, 100% relief on it. So the uptake is pretty strong for obviously anyone that wants to. Obviously, nobody wants to pay tax, so any form of like 100% relief to defer it is a bonus. And then obviously like you're only paying it when you're releasing your shares, and obviously we've got our projected value if everything goes to plan, how sort of the three of us perceive it going.
Which is?
It's a very strong value. Obviously, if you think each user of the piece of software, when we license it out, will obviously be paying a subscription fee. Our plan is to get a minimum of 240 agents on the software, which is like the equivalent of like one a town. If they were
UK wide, you mean?
we worked off the basis of if we had a minimum of one agent per town, so we were like, right, say 240 agents as like a starting point. Obviously we want to have more, like, Middlesbrough's probably about 15 agents in Borough, like we only want to get one. But like, so there's a lot more opportunity, but if we can get like 1% of the agents and 1% of the landlords, we reckon it'd be about circa 20 million value. Like if a VC was to sort of value it, we reckon it'd be circa 20 million on the software. And I think software, anything sort of like software as a solution type businesses are big. Like they've been big for a couple of years now, but I think they're just going to continue to grow. All the big players went down that route. Like look at, I don't know if I'm just showing my age, but I remember Adobe Photoshop when I was like, a bit younger. You'd buy it, wouldn't you? You'd pay like, I don't know, a couple of £100, maybe £1,000 for this all fancy software. And it was like, it was never affordable. Like, you'd have to get your mate to try and get you a dodgy Adobe Photoshop because it was such like a high-end piece of software. Whereas like now they've went, we're not going to charge you like $1,000 per license. We're just going to charge you like $9.99 a month. But now like everyone's got it. but like everyone's paying $9.99 a month. And then I remember when Adobe swapped to like their cloud platform, their share price skyrocketed because obviously all of the like VCs and stuff and all the like institutional investors will have went, well, you're going to sell to maybe like, I don't know, rather than selling to 10,000 people, you're going to have like 10 million people paying you $9.99 a month. And then the second they stop paying that subscription, the software turns off and they want it back. And it's like the whole, like everything you can think of in the tech sector has gone to a subscription platform. So everything is like this, you know, $4.99 a month, $7.99 a month. Like Amazon Prime, I've been paying that for God knows how many years and I couldn't be without it.
Yeah.
You know, I hate paying, you know, the measly £8-9 a month. And I'm like, what do they get for that? Like, what do they give? But it's that next day delivery.
Yeah.
It's like, if I order something, I want to know that that present's there tomorrow. Like, and if it's not there the next day, I'm fuming.
Yeah.
But like, you're paying for that. And then, yeah, there's a reason why Jeff Bezos is doing as well as he's doing.
100%. So you've sold, you're 40, you've made your millions are in the bank. What does life look like after that?
What, at 40?
That's a 5-year plan, isn't it? 50
Yeah,
to 40. So let's say you exit by that time, right? And then what does life look like then?
I'd like to say I'd calm down a bit, but I think, you know, I can't see me calming down anytime soon. Something passive, like touching on what you said, like I think the big thing for me would be being a lot slower whilst the kids are young. Yeah, I'd probably still be doing a couple of days a week, doing something passive or working on some form of passive business. I don't think I could stop fully. I don't think I couldn't just sit around 5, 6, 7 days a week. I'd go insane, and Helen would go insane. Like whenever I have been at home in the past, like for an extended period of time, she's like, just get out of the house. Like, you know, love each other a bit, but there's only so much that I can sit at home because she knows I get bored, and like, you know, I need to find something to do. But traveling, I think traveling definitely.
Where do you want to go?
Everywhere and anywhere.
You like America, don't you?
I love America. Absolutely love America. Funny enough, we looked at moving to America before we had the kids. I hate the UK. I like openly don't want to be here.
Dubai?
So at the moment, it's obviously like I've got to respect Helen. Like obviously, her mum's elderly. She doesn't want to be too far away from her mum, and like I can understand it. But for me, I just can't see the UK as like a business entrepreneur. It doesn't offer a lot, sadly. Dubai is like somewhere that I've been screaming to move to. She's like, no, like, why would I want to do that? Like, you see, I want to move to Dubai and leave me like basically stuck in a villa in Dubai with 3 kids. And I was like, you can go find some other mums over there. I'm sure there'll be other mums. Yeah. You know, go hang out at like a creche. Yeah. I was like, the opportunities and everything like out there is incredible.
And the weather as well. Which, I mean, you only have to look outside today and it makes you move,
exactly. Like I've said many a time, like I don't know, Spain, like Dubai, anywhere really. I hate the weather. Like I love the UK for family. Like Christmas, I feel like I'd always want to come home at like some point in like Christmas, winter time. I think like I've got this nice sort of feeling around Christmas, like the period between sort of like Christmas, Boxing Day and New Year, like it gives like a nice sense of family being at home in the UK. Whether I'd just swap that from like Dubai to like going to like somewhere like the French Alps and go to a ski forest or like freeze and then think, oh, this is like being at home. I think I'd probably come home, but like, yeah, I can't see, if I get my own way, I can't see past 40 being in the UK. Like if I get
what do you reckon the business partners would do if they were, say, he's all sold in 5 years' time? What do you reckon they'd do?
Probably similar sort of stories. I think like we're all sort of like grafters. Like we all sort of put our heads down and get on with it. So we'd end up doing some form of, you know, business in one shape or another.
Together, do you reckon, or do you reckon is?
Even if it was separately, I mean, we probably would end up together. But like I said, I know Martin's similar. Like he's got a passion of like he wants to sort of like in a couple of years' time like leave the UK. But again, I think it's like for him, he's got obviously family, kids, and that, and like it's hard when they're so rooted to an area to almost like.
Yeah,
it's easy enough for a man. It feels easy for the male to just go, oh yeah, we'll go here or we'll go here. And like sometimes like the woman almost gets left as a default parent, and it's like it's not meant to be that sort of vision, but it's the old school, you know, the man goes out to work, the woman looks after the kids, and it's like, don't know, for you it might be like you might have a similar thing like, oh, I could go to Dubai, but then it's like, well, what about the missus and the kid?
That's
like,
it, yeah.
Like you've got to think of them, don't you?
It's like the wider family as well, isn't it? It's like yeah, because it comes back to how we started this podcast. It's balance, isn't it? You've got to somehow find that balance. I think my perfect scenario would be similar to what you've said in terms of come back for a few months whenever you want, you know. But yeah, we'll see. But last question, Chris, before we finish. What if you had one piece of advice you could give to your younger self, what would it be?
Probably take more advice from people that are already more experienced, whether that's like in the shape of a mentor, you know, taking someone out, like going and grabbing a pint, going and getting some food. I think people are scared to lean on other people for advice because like they feel like they may turn around and say no, or, you know, paying for someone's like time or advice isn't a bad thing. Like that's probably going to get you a lot further, a lot quicker. I definitely think like mentorships and people like, you know, running down like a mentor route isn't a bad thing. I'm not a big, huge fan on the whole education, big, massive, you know, run to the back of the room type style seminars. But I think like a close one-to-one or like 1 to 2, 1 to 3 knitted like community is perfect. So like if someone was coming and learning one-to-one with somebody that's already walked the walk, I think that's great. I don't think like the, you know, 1 to 500 like type style approach is the best. I think people end up throwing a lot of money away, but I think the whole one-to-one and getting someone's time and really sort of, you know, going out for food with them, asking them questions, like getting the sort of the nitty-gritty that you don't learn if you went on like a course as such, that's definitely like the shortcut really if you want to sort of jump further faster.
Interesting. And then if people want to get in touch about the PropTech platform or, you know, buying property in the Northeast, refurbs, property management, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, Chris Bunn on socials. Like I said, send me a message on Facebook. Find me on Instagram, although it's probably normally just me posting photos of me runs.
I
had an employee that did the Great North Run. It was a running joke. I was like, well, if he finishes the Great North Run, I'm doing it. And I'm like now living up to that word that I shouldn't have said. I was like, if he does that, I'll do it. And now I'm like, right, I've got to start training and everything. I could barely run to the corner shop about 2 months ago, whereas now I'm like, I don't know how I'm smashing out like 10k runs now. I don't know how I'm doing it, but I need to keep the training going over Christmas. That's the thing that I'm dreading. Like when I went to Disney for a week, I said, I'll take my running gear, and I just didn't. I was in like Disneyland. Like it's not the place to go running, is it?
Run away from the kids.
Running away from Mickey Mouse. I was too busy focused on like, you know, just spending time with the family. And I'm like, I got back and then like I was like, my legs feel heavy, so I don't want to slip over Christmas. I'm like, I need to stay accountable and like touch. Like it's having someone to keep you accountable, isn't it? Like when I want to jump into bed and like just, you know, relax on an evening, the kids are all asleep, and I'm like, right, I'm just going to chill now. Helen's like, get out, like get on a run. I'm like, all right, okay,
yeah.
Like. Definitely don't want to do it. It's freezing cold. There's a storm out there, but yeah, I'll go put my trainers on. I'll go for a run.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for coming on, mate.
I appreciate it.
Top man.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rod.